Post-World War II, in the late 1940s, early 1950s, the American beat generation emerged from the underground counterculture. The Beats were nonconformists, rebels against tradition, those seeking literary freedoms of expression. They had a universal desire of liberating free speech without censorship, a generation that changed the world as we know it. In 1944, the literary movement started with a group of revolutionary artists, writers, and musicians. The core group of authors included Jack Kerouac, Allen Ginsberg, Neal Cassady, and William Burroughs. The Beat generation was created, also known as the Lost Generation, those who didn't fit in with the norm of society, the outcasts, the ones who marched to the beat of a different drum, a renaissance of its time, where writers pushed the limits to answer universal concepts and ideas. Beat rebellions stood in opposition of the traditional materialistic lifestyles. The artists gathered near Columbia University in uptown Manhattan. Later adding to the group was Gregory Korsko, found in the city's bohemian Greenwich Village, and Herbert Huncke, found hanging around New York Times Square. The core group eventually made it out to the West Coast, where they expanded their conscience group in San Francisco, meeting Gary Snyder, Lawrence Ferretti, Michael McClure, Philip Walden, and Lou Welch. Popular poems and writings from the Beat generation changed our perspective on how artists express worldly views such as philosophies on religion, politics, ethics, morals, and sexual orientation. Sunflower Sutra excerpt. We're not our skin of grime. We're not our dread bleak, dusty, imageless locomotive. We're all beautiful golden sunflowers inside. We're blessed by our own seeds and golden, hairy, naked, accomplished bodies, growing into mad, black, formal sunflowers in the sunsets, spying on by our eyes under the shadows of the mad locomotive, riverbank, sunset, Frisco, hilly, tin can, evening, sit-down vision. End quote, Allen Ginsberg. Controversial Beat works include the 1952 first ever Beat novel, Go, by John Kellingham Holmes, the 1956 Howl, a collection of Allen Ginsberg's poems published by Lawrence Ferretti, and the 1968 work of Ken Casedy's The Electric Kool-Aid Acid Test featuring the Merry Pranksters. These literary works would drastically impact the American counterculture and writing styles to come. The Beat generation phrase was coined by Jack Kerouac in 1948. However, the phrase wasn't introduced to the public until November 16, 1952, when Kerouac's friend, John Kellingham Holmes, wrote an article for the New York Times Magazine. This is the Beat generation. That same year, in 1952, Holmes released the first ever depiction of the Beat generation in the novel Go. The main character struggles to maintain a marriage while simultaneously living the life of a carefree beat, indulging in self-expression through casual drug use, wild partying, promiscuous sex, and petty crime. Truly a rebel of the times. On October 7, 1955, a legendary poetry reading occurred at the Sixth Gallery in San Francisco. This was the first time Allen Ginsberg presented his poem, Howl. Excerpts from the poem that hooked my attention are as stated. Confessing out the soul to conform to the rhythm of thought, and repetition and lavish accumulation of language. End of quote. 1956 Howl, published by Lawrence Ferretti, found in the Portable 60's Reader. Ferretti, owner of City Lights Bookstore, good time friend of Allen Ginsberg in San Francisco, published Ginsberg's infamous poem, The Howl. Years later, Ginsberg's poem had been the subject of a sensational obscenity trial. Civil liberties union lawyers had helped Ferlinghetti convince the judge that the book had redeeming social importance. Howe is known today as one of the greatest works of American literature. Counterculture Chronicles continued with the 1968 work of Ken Cassady in the Electric Kool-Aid Acid Test featuring the Merry Pranksters, created a direct link between the 1950s beat generation and the 1960s psychedelic scene. The bus was driven by beat icon Neal Cassady, beat poet Allen Ginsberg, and the beat author Jack Kerouac. By the late 1960s, the beatnik stereotype was born. Rule breaker, sexy intellectual with unique style who's self-liberating by rejecting materialism and the standards of traditional lifestyles. Exploring world religions, views such as Buddhism and Eastern medicine, focusing on the human condition and experimenting with psychedelic drugs to expand one's perspective. Do you have what it takes to live like a beatnik? I encourage you to accept the challenge by exploring your civil liberties. Take the time for your self-expression. Attend social gatherings where music is the universal language, a language so powerful it unites people of all walks of life. My friends Molly, Emma, and my daughter Marilyn decided we should live like a beatnik for the weekend. We embraced our style with 1960s glam, cruising in our black and white Mini Cooper with the windows down and music blasting throughout the town. We found a sense of liberation, the spirit of the 60s that we were looking for, stopping at every coffee house, used book, and music store that sold vinyl records. Aimlessly searching for locations where live music was being played. We danced like we were crazy, shared common ideas over cups of tea and coffee, laughed hysterically, and acted completely foolish in the streets. I'd have to admit it, sure was good old-fashioned fun. No social media, no distractions, just one-on-one connections inspiring personal growth and creativity.